The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched higher than most species could. See, thousands of delegates from hundreds of worlds sat in their designated sections, their voices creating a noise that sounded like a strange ocean. Above them all the Council Prime stood at the central podium, their forearms raised for silence. Ambassador Marcus Chen sat in the human section far in the back where the younger species were placed. His fingers drummed nervously on the armrest of his chair. He had been part of the council for only 3 years, and humanity still felt like guests who might be asked to leave at any moment. The matter of the Vidian situation has been discussed for 6 standard months, the Council Prime announced. Their voice echoed through translation devices that every species wore. We must now vote on the proposed solution. Chen leaned forward. The Vidian situation, that was what they called it, not a catastrophe, not a tragedy, a situation. The Vidians were dying. Their home star was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. The entire species needed to evacuate their planet within 2 years or they would all perish. It should have been simple. The galaxy had thousands of ships. There was plenty of room on other worlds, but the Vidians had a problem. Their biology was unique, fragile in ways that made them difficult to transport. Standard faster than light travel killed them. The radiation from most engines stopped their hearts within hours. Special ships would need to be built, ships that cost enormous amounts of money and resources. The council had done the mathematics. They had run the numbers through their computers and economic models. The result was clear to them. Saving the Vidians was too expensive. In the front section, the powerful species sat. The Zethari representative stood. The Zethari were an old species, one of the founding members of the council. They looked like massive cats that walked upright with silver fur and eyes that seemed to judge everything. They saw the cost would be substantial. The Zethari said 240 billion credits to build the necessary transport vessels. Another H100 red billion to relocate them to a suitable world. We must ask ourselves if this is a wise use of resources when those same resources could benefit billions of other citizens. Chen felt his hands clench into fists. They were talking about 16 million lives as if they were a bad investment. A Vidian stood in there small section just a few rows ahead of Chen. Her name was Keshula, and Chen had spoken with her many times over the past months. She was young, barely 30. Human years, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the chamber lights. Her people were beautiful, delicate, with large eyes that showed every emotion they felt. Honored Council, Kesha said, her voice shaking but clear. We understand the burden we represent, but we are not asking for charity. We are asking for time. Give us the chance to survive, and we will repay every credit. We will work for generations if we must. Our people are skilled in bioengineering and medical research. We have knowledge that could benefit the entire galaxy. Please, we are not asking you to give us everything. We are only asking you not to let us die. The chamber fell quiet. For a moment, Chen saw some delegates look uncomfortable. Others simply looked bored, as if they had heard this plea too many times already. Then the consortium representative spoke. The consortium was a collection of wealthy trade worlds, species that had built their power on business and profit. We sympathize with the Vidian people, the representative said in a voice that held no sympathy at all. But we must face reality. Vidians number only 16 million. The cost per individual exceeds 20,000 credits. This is not sustainable. There are other species, other causes that could use these resources more effectively. They you are people, not numbers. In a budget report, Chen found himself standing, the words bursting out before he could stop them. Thousands of eyes turned to look at him. The council prime's expression showed surprise. Junior members rarely spoke out of turn. Ambassador Chen of Earth, the council prime said slowly, you wish to address the council. Chen's heart pounded. He knew he was breaking protocol. He knew he might damage humanity's standing. But when he looked at Kesha, saw the hope and fear in her eyes, he could not stay silent. Yes, Council Prime, I speak not just for Earth, but for the basic principles this council was founded on. We tell ourselves we are civilized. We tell ourselves we are better than the chaos of the old days when species fought and conquered each other. But what are we if we let an entire people die because helping them is inconvenient? What does that make us? The Zthari representative turned to face him. It makes us practical, young human. The universe is not fair. Resources are limited. We cannot save everyone. We are not trying to save everyone. Chen shot back. We are trying to save 16 million people who have done nothing wrong except have the bad luck to evolve on a world with a dying star. If we cannot help them, if we choose not to help them, then this council is nothing but a club for the rich and powerful. The human speaks with passion, another delegate said, but passion does not pay bills. Where would these resources come from? Who would sacrifice for the Vidians? Chen opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the council prime raised their arms again. Enough debate. We have discussed this matter thoroughly. It is time to vote. The proposal is to designate the Vidian system as a quarantine zone and allow nature to take its course. A vote of yes means we accept this proposal. A vote of no means we commit resources to evacuation. Let the vote begin. The chamber filled with light as delegates registered their votes. Chen watched the massive display screen above the council prime. Green lights for yes, red lights for no. Green lights multiplied like a disease spreading across the screen. Chen voted no. His light appeared on the screen, one small red dot among a sea of green. Keshela sat down slowly in her seat. Chen could see her shoulders shaking. The final tally appeared, 847 in favor of abandonment, only 3 against. The motion passes. The Council Prime announced the Vidian system will be quarantined. No resources will be allocated for evacuation. This session is adjourned. The chamber erupted in noise as delegates stood and began to leave. Most looked relieved. Some looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Chen saw Keshula sitting alone, her face in her hands. He made his way to her. I am so sorry, he said. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. You voted for us, your species and 2 others, but it was not enough. It is not over, Chen said, though he did not know if he believed his own words. Yes, it is, Kesha whispered. In 2 years my people will be gone. The galaxy has decided we do not matter enough to save. Chen left the council chambers feeling a rage he had never known before. As he walked through the corridors to the transport station, he pulled out his communication device. He recorded a message. his hands shaking. With anger, this is Ambassador Marcus. Chen to Earth Central Command. The Council has voted to abandon the Vidians. They are going to let 16 million people die because it costs too much to save them. I am formally requesting that Earth consider independent action. We cannot let this stand. We cannot be part of a system that values profit over life. If the galaxy will not save them, then maybe we should. He sent the message, knowing it would reach Earth in hours, knowing it might cost him his career, knowing it might cost humanity its place in the Council. But as he left the Council station and looked out at the stars, he knew he had done the right thing. Sometimes the right thing was the only thing, no matter the cost. The news reached Earth like a thunderclap. Within hours of Ambassador Chen's message, every major news network was running the story. Images of the Vidians appeared on screens across the planet, their delicate blue faces, their large, expressive eyes, their desperate pleas to the Council, and then the vote, that terrible sea of green lights that condemned them to death. In S. Palu, protesters filled the streets by the thousands, holding signs that read, "We are all Vidians, and the galaxy chose wrong." In New York, students at the university occupied the United Nations building, demanding action. In Shanghai, Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, Moscow, and 100 other cities, the message was the same. Humanity would not stand by and watch innocent people die. The Earth government met in emergency session. President Jiang sat at the head of the table, surrounded by advisors and representatives from Mars, Luna, and the outer colonies. The debate was fierce. We cannot afford to anger the Council. The Secretary of Trade insisted they control access to the major trade routes. Our economy depends on good relations with the other species. If we defy them, we could face sanctions that would hurt billions of our own people. And if we do nothing, shot back the representative from Mars, what does that say about who we are? We joined the Council because we believed in something better. If this is what the Council does, then maybe we are standing with the wrong people. The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. We have the ships, not enough for a full evacuation, but enough to make a difference. The real question is whether we are willing to face the consequences. President Jiang was quiet for a long time. She looked at the screen showing the protest, showing the faces of people who were angry, heartbroken, and demanding that their government do something good, something right, even if it was hard. Contact Ambassador Chen. She finally said, tell him Earth stands with the Vidians. We will begin preparing a rescue operation immediately. But the government moved slowly, as governments always did. There were plans to make resources, to allocate diplomatic channels, to navigate. Every hour of debate was an hour the Vidians did not have. The people of Earth were not willing to wait. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood on the deck of her ship, the carrier vessel Independence, and watched as her commanding officer delivered the news. The Navy was being mobilized, but it would take months to organize an official operation. Months the Vidians did not have. That night, Sarah sat in her quarters and thought about her grandmother. The old woman had been a refugee, fleeing war in her homeland when she was just a child. Strangers had helped her, people who owed her nothing, people who simply refused to look away from suffering, because that is what humans do. Her grandmother had always said, When we are at our best, we help, we do not calculate the cost, we do not debate if it is convenient, we help because it is. Right. Sarah made her decision. The next morning, she walked into her commander's office and placed her resignation on desk. Sir, I am leaving the service effective immediately. I am going to help the Vidians. Her commander looked at her for a long moment. You will be throwing away a brilliant career, Captain. You could be an admiral one day. What good is being an admiral if I do nothing when it matters? Sarah replied she was not alone. Within days, hundreds of military personnel resigned to join what was being called the Independent Rescue Fleet. Civilian ship captains volunteered their vessels, engineers, doctors, teachers, and ordinary people who had never been to space signed up to help in any way they could. A young programmer named David Lynn created a website where people could donate money and resources. Within the first day, it raised 300 million credits. Within a week, over 2 billion, not from governments or corporations, but from ordinary people giving whatever they could spare. In orbit around Mars, the fleet began to gather. They were a strange collection: old cargo ships, retired military vessels, private yachts, mining ships and colony transports. 47 ships in total, many of them barely spaceworthy, held together by determination and hope. The biggest problem was the Vidian biology. Standard transport would kill them within hours. Human engineers and scientists worked around the clock, trying to design specialized pods that would protect the Vidians during the journey. Dr. Amamira Hassan led the biological engineering team. She had studied the Vidian medical files that Keshela had sent, looking for any way to make transport possible. The solution she designed was not elegant, but it might work. Special pods filled with a gel that would regulate temperature and block harmful radiation. Each pod could hold one Vidian in a state of partial hibernation. It is not perfect, Dr. Hassan admitted to Sarah. Some of them might not survive the journey. The pods are experimental. We have not had time for proper testing. How many can we save with what we have? Sarah asked. Dr. Hassan did the calculations. If everything works perfectly, if we do not lose any ships, if all the pods function as designed, we can evacuate maybe 60% of their population, 9 million people. And the others, they will die on their world when the star collapses. Sarah felt the weight of those words. They could not save everyone, but 9 million was better than 0. 9 million people who would live because humans refused to look away. 3 weeks after the council vote, the Independent Rescue Fleet was as ready as it would ever be. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Independence, which had been rechristened by its crew. Around her, the 47 ships prepared for departure. President Jiang appeared on the main screen, broadcasting to the entire fleet, "What you are about to do is not officially sanctioned by the Earth government. We cannot protect you from council sanctions. We cannot guarantee your safety, but know this: every person on Earth is watching. We are proud of you. You carry humanity's hope with you." Then another face appeared, Ambassador Chen, looking tired but determined. "The council has issued a formal warning. They say any ship that enters the Vidian system will be considered in violation of the quarantine. They say there will be consequences. I say let them try to stop you." Council's warning came officially an hour before the fleet departed. Any interference with the Vidian quarantine would result in humanity's immediate expulsion from the Council and comprehensive trade sanctions against all human worlds. Any ships entering the system would be fired upon. Sarah read the warning and then deleted it. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. Everyone has heard the threats. Anyone who wants to turn back, I understand. No one will judge you. This is your last chance to reconsider. Not a single ship powered down, not a single captain requested permission to withdraw. Then let's go save some lives, Sarah said. The fleet engaged there faster than light drives and vanished into the darkness of space, heading toward a dying star and a people the galaxy had abandoned. On Earth, people gathered in public spaces to watch the news coverage, in homes and offices, on streets and in parks. Billions of humans waited and hoped. Some prayed to gods they had not spoken to in years. Others simply watched the stars, knowing that somewhere out there ordinary people were doing something extraordinary. The journey would take 10 days. The Vidian star had perhaps 60 days before it collapsed completely. Every hour would matter. Every decision would mean the difference between life and death. But the fleet was moving, and for the first time since the Council vote, there was hope. On the Vidian home world, Kesha received the message from Ambassador Chen. Humans were coming, not because their government ordered them to, not because they would gain anything from it, but because they had looked at the galaxy's cruelty and said no. She broadcast the news to her people in cities and villages across the planet. Vidians who had been preparing to die suddenly had something they thought they had lost forever. They had a chance. The human fleet dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Vidian system and immediately knew they had a problem. 32 warships hung in space between them and the dying star. The vessels belonged to the Zethari Empire, their silver hulls gleaming with weapon ports open and ready. They had formed a blockade around the system exactly as the Council had warned. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Independence, staring at the tactical display. She had hoped the Council's threats were empty. She had been wrong. Incoming transmission, her communications officer announced. Zethari Admiral appeared on the screen. Her silver fur was marked with the scars of many battles, and her yellow eyes held no warmth. Human vessels, you are in violation of Council quarantine protocols. Turn back immediately or you will be fired upon. Sarah took a deep breath. Behind her she could feel the tension from her crew. They had come so far they could not stop now. Admiral, we are on a humanitarian mission. We are not here to fight. We are here to save lives. The Council has ruled. The Vidian system is closed. Turn back. We will not turn back, Sarah said quietly. You will have to shoot us. The Zethari Admiral's expression did not change. If that is your choice, the channel closed. Sarah looked at her crew. All ships maximum shields form a protective formation around the transport vessels. We are going in. The fleet moved forward. 47 ships against 32 warships. It should not have been a contest. The Zethari vessels were military designed for war. Most of the human ships were civilian with shields meant to protect against asteroids and radiation, not weapons fire. But Sarah was betting on something. She was betting that the Zethari did not Really want to massacre unarmed rescue workers in full view of the galaxy. Every ship in the fleet was broadcasting live footage back to Earth and beyond. Billions of people were watching. Warning shots blazed past the human vessels, plasma bolts that lit up space. With angry red light, the fleet did not slow down. They're going to fire for real, the tactical officer said, his voice tight with fear. Keep moving. Sarah ordered, all power to shields. Do not return fire under any circumstances. More shots came closer this time. One struck a cargo ship called the Maria Gonzalez. The shields flared and held, but the ship shook violently. Sarah watched the telemetry, praying the old vessel would not break apart. Then the Independence shook as a plasma bolt hit them directly. Alarms blared, the lights flickered, shielded 60%. Someone reported, another hit like that and we are in trouble. But the fleet kept moving, pushing through the blockade. Like swimmers fighting against a terrible current, the Zethari ships fired again and again, but Sarah noticed something. They were pulling their shots, hitting shields but not delivering killing blows. They did not want to be the ones who murdered rescue workers on live broadcast. The fleet broke through the blockade and entered the Vidian system. Behind them, the Zethari ships held position but did not pursue. We made it, the communications officer said, his voice full of disbelief. The easy part is done, Sarah replied. Now the real work begins. The Vidian home world appeared on their screens. Beautiful blue and green planet that looked so much like Earth. But the star it orbited was dying, growing redder and larger with each passing day. Radiation levels were already dangerous. They could all see the massive solar flares erupting from the star's surface. Cecil's face appeared on the main screen. She was crying, but Sarah could see joy mixed with the tears. You came, you actually came. We said we would. Sarah replied, now let's get your people out of here. We do not have much time. The evacuation began immediately. The specialized biopods were loaded onto shuttles and sent down to the surface. Vidian families gathered at designated evacuation points, carrying whatever they could fit in small bags. Most brought nothing but pictures and memories. Sarah watched the operation from the Independence, coordinating with the other ships. The pods worked, but barely. Each one had to be carefully calibrated for the individual Vidian. Inside, the process was slow, far too slow. At this rate, we can only save about 4,000 people per day, Dr. Hassan reported. We need at least 60 more days to evacuate everyone we hope to save. We have maybe 40 days before the star becomes too unstable. Sarah did the math. In her head, they were going to fall short, significantly short. Maybe they could save 5 million instead of 9 million, maybe less. On the surface, Vidian parents made impossible choices. The evacuation was prioritizing children and young adults, those with the most life ahead of them. Parents said goodbye to their children, knowing they might never see them again. One scene broke Sarah's heart. A Vidian mother placed her daughter, who looked about 6 in human years, into a biopod. The child was crying, reaching for her mother. Will you come too? The child asked. Soon, the mother lied. Mama will come on a later ship. You be brave for me. The human technician who sealed the pod was crying too. His name was James Park, and he had 3 children back on Earth. He worked through his tears, making sure the pod was perfectly sealed, that the Child would be safe. This scene repeated thousands of times each day, parents sacrificing their own chance at survival so their children could live, the elderly insisting that younger people take their places in the pods, couples separating, not knowing if they would ever see each other again. Kesha worked alongside the human crews, helping coordinate the evacuation. She barely slept, running on determination. In desperation, Sarah often saw her comforting terrified children or helping load pods onto shuttles. You should rest, Sarah told her one day. How can I rest when my people are dying? Kesha replied, every minute I waste is someone who will not get a pod, who will not escape. On the 10th day of the evacuation, disaster struck. One of the transport ships, the Destiny Dawn, suffered a catastrophic systems failure. The biopods inside lost power. 300 Vidians died before anyone could help them. The news spread across the fleet like a poison. Sarah could feel the morale dropping. They were losing people, even as they tried to save them. But they kept working. What else could they do? Stop trying, give up. That was not an option. The Zethari blockade remained in position watching. They did not help, but they also stopped firing. They seemed content to watch the human struggle, perhaps believing that the impossible task would defeat them without any need for weapons. Admiral Thex commanded the blockade fleet from her flagship. She watched the human ships work day and night, watched them push their vessels and themselves beyond any reasonable limit. She saw the exhaustion on their faces in the intercepted communications. She saw them cry when they failed and saw them keep trying anyway. Something about it disturbed her. The Zethari were warriors, proud of their strength and their honor. But there was something deeply wrong about watching civilians die while she did nothing. This was not battle. This was not honorable combat. This was just watching people perish because saving them was inconvenient. At night, when her crew could not see her, Admiral Thex watched footage from the Vidian surface. She saw the children being separated from their parents. She saw the old ones volunteering to stay behind so younger people could live. She saw humans working until they collapsed from exhaustion, then getting up and working more. The Zethari had a saying, honor is what remains when everything else is taken away. She began to wonder what honor really meant. On the 30th day, the star's instability increased dramatically. Solar flares reached out toward the planet, bathing it in deadly radiation. The evacuation sites had to be moved multiple times as areas became too dangerous. Several shuttles were damaged by radiation bursts. 2 human crew members died when their shuttle shielding failed. Sarah made the announcement she had been dreading. We need to increase the pace, or we will not save even half of who we hoped. We are going to start running the pods at reduced safety margins. The risk of failure increases, but it is better than certain death. Dr. Hassan protested. The failure rate could be as high as 10%, and the death rate if we do nothing is 100%, Sarah replied. The decision was made. The pace increased. More Vidians were loaded each day, but more pods failed too. The numbers saved went up, but so did the numbers lost. Every life lost felt like a personal failure to Sarah. She stopped sleeping more than 2 hours a night. She stopped eating regular meals. Her crew worried about her, but they were all pushing themselves just as hard. By day 40, they had evacuated 7 million Vidians. Another 9 million remained on the planet. The star was growing more unstable by the hour. The science officers predicted they had maybe 10 days left, perhaps less. It was not going to be enough, no matter how hard they tried, no matter how many risks they took. Millions were going to die. Sarah stood on the bridge looking at the numbers and felt despair creeping in for the first time. They had done so much, but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. Then the communications officer looked up, his face showing shock. "Captain, we have incoming ships, multiple vessels dropping out of FTL." Sarah's first thought was that the Zethari were reinforcing the blockade. Her second thought was that it did not matter anymore. They were not leaving. But when the new ships appeared on the tactical display, they were not Zafari warships. They were the ships came from everywhere. First came 3 vessels from the Krillin Collective, a species of insect-like beings who had always been neutral in council politics. Their cargo ships were old but functional, and their message was simple: "We saw what you were doing, we want to help." Then came 5 ships from the Daxer Union, a species that looked like walking crystals. They brought medical supplies and more biopod components. Within hours, 20 new ships had arrived. Within a day, 50 more. They came from small species, minor worlds, the ones who sat in the back of the council chambers, just like humanity. None of them were rich, none of them were powerful, but they all had something to offer. Captain Sarah Okonkwo could barely believe what she was seeing. "Open a channel to all new arrivals," she said. Faces from a dozen different species appeared on the screens around her. Some she recognized from council sessions, others were complete strangers. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come?" A Krillin captain answered, her translated voice carrying a strange clicking rhythm. "Because you showed us that we were wrong. We voted to abandon the Vidians because we thought we had no choice, because we thought that is how the galaxy works. You proved there is always a choice. You chose to help. We choose to help too." The Daxer representative, whose crystalline face reflected light and beautiful patterns, spoke next. "For too long, we have let the great powers make all the decisions. We have hidden behind excuses about cost and practicality. But you humans, you are new and small and weak by council standards, and yet you did what all of us were too afraid to do. If you can stand up for what is right, then so can we." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "Welcome to the fleet," she managed to say. The evacuation pace accelerated dramatically. With the new ships and supplies, they could process 3 times as many Vidians each day. The specialized pods were still the bottleneck, but the other species had brought raw materials and fabrication equipment. Working together, they began producing new pods much faster. Dr. Hassan worked with scientists from 6 different species, sharing knowledge and techniques. A Daxer medical specialist suggested a modification to the gel mixture that reduced pod failure rates by half. A Krillin engineer designed a more efficient power system that let each pod operate longer. On the surface, Vidian families who had given up hope suddenly had reason to believe again. The evacuation lists were recalculated. People who had accepted death might now have a chance at life. But the Zethari blockade remained. Admiral Thex watched as more ships arrived to join the rescue effort. Each new arrival had to pass through her blockade. She could stop Her orders were clear. No one was supposed to enter the system, but with each passing day following those orders became harder. She watched the broadcast. From the surface, she saw species that had been enemies for centuries working side by side. She saw humans share their food with Vidians even when supplies were running low. She saw a Krillin medic work for 20 hours straight to save a single Vidian child. Admiral, her second in command, said, "The Council is demanding to know why we are allowing these ships through. Tell them we are monitoring the situation." Theeks replied, "But Admiral, our orders." "I know. Our orders." The snapped then more quietly, "I know what we were ordered to do." That night, Thek sat alone in her quarters, watching footage from one of the human ships. A human woman, clearly exhausted, was sealing a Vidian child into a biopod. The child was afraid, crying for her parents. The human knelt down and spoke gently. "I know you are scared." The human said, "I have a daughter about your age. Her name is Emma. When you get to the safe place, I want you to be brave like my Emma would be. Can you do that for me?" The child nodded, still crying but calmer. The human sealed the pod, then stayed beside it until the child fell asleep. Only then did she move to the next pod. The next terrified child that turned off the screen. She thought about honor, about duty, about what a warrior was supposed to do. The Zithari had always prided themselves on their warrior code, strength, courage, honor above all else. But was there honor in this? Was there courage in sitting safely in orbit while others risked everything to save strangers? On day 45, the star's instability reached a critical point. Massive solar flares erupted continuously. The radiation on the planet's surface was becoming lethal, even with protective gear. Evacuation sites had to be moved underground, slowing everything down. Again, Sarah called a meeting of all ship captains. Faces from dozens of species appeared on her screens. "We have evacuated 11 million Vidians," she said. 5 million remain on the surface. The planet will be uninhabitable within 5 days. We need to push harder, take more risks, or millions will die. Our crews are already exhausted," one captain said. "If we push them harder, we will start making mistakes. More people will die from accidents, and if we do not push harder, we will leave 5 million people behind." Sarah replied, "I am not ordering anyone to do more than they can, but I need to know what we have left to give." There was silence for a moment. Then the Krillin captain spoke. "My crew has voted. We will work without sleep shifts. Until this is done, we will rest when the Vidians are safe." One by one, the other captains agreed. They would push beyond exhaustion, beyond what was safe, beyond what was reasonable, because the alternative was giving up, and none of them could live with that. The Zithari blockade watched as the rescue ships pushed themselves to the breaking point. Admiral Thck saw human crew members collapse from exhaustion and be carried to medical bays, only to return to work hours later against doctor's orders. She saw ships running on backup systems because their primary engines had burned out from overuse. She saw species that had never spoken to each other before working together like they had been friends for years. On day 47, Admiral Thex received a direct order from the Zithari High Command. The Council had decided the rescue effort had gone on long enough. The humans and their allies were making the Council look bad. The Blockade was to open fire and force the rescue ships to leave immediately. Theeks. Read the order 3 times, then she stood up and called her senior officers. To the bridge, we have received orders to fire on the rescue vessels, she told them, to destroy civilian ships engaged in humanitarian work, to kill people who are trying to save lives. Her officers looked uncomfortable. None of them spoke. I want each of you to think about this carefully, Thex continued. We are warriors. We serve the Zethari Empire and follow orders, but we also have a code of honor. We do not make war on the defenseless. We do not strike down those who are not threats to us. We do not kill people who are trying to help others. Admiral, if we disobey, we will be branded traitors, one officer said quietly. Yes, Vex agreed. We will lose everything, our ranks, our honors, possibly our lives. The Empire will call us cowards and criminals. She looked at each of them. But if we follow these orders, what will we be? What kind of warriors fire on rescue ships? What kind of people are we if we massacre those who are trying to do good? The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then her second-in-command stood. I stand with you, Admiral, whatever you decide. One by one, the other officers stood as well. Vex nodded slowly. Then let us choose honor over orders, even if it costs us everything. She opened a channel to the rescue fleet. Sarah's face appeared on the screen, showing surprise at the communication. Captain Okonkwo, Beck said formally, I have been ordered to fire on your vessels and force you to leave. I am here to inform you that I will not follow those orders. Sarah stared at her. Why? Because I have watched you for 47 days. I have seen humans and Krillins and Daxer and a dozen other species work together, risk everything for people who cannot repay you. I have seen courage that puts my warrior people to shame. I thought I understood honor. You have taught me that I was wrong. Thex took a deep breath. The Zethari blockade is standing down. We will not interfere with your work. More than that, my ships will assist with the evacuation. We cannot do much, but we can transport some Vidians to safety. Admiral, Sarah said slowly. You know what this means for you? Yes, but my crew and I have decided that some things matter more than our careers. Some things matter more than our lives. The Vidians matter more. The channel closed. Within minutes, the Zethari warships moved out of blockade formation. Their shuttles began making trips to the surface, carrying Vidians to safety. The massive military vessels were not designed for refugee transport, but the Zethari crews made it work. Anyway, the news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Zethari, the proud warrior species, had defied the Council to help with the rescue. If they could change their minds, anyone could. More ships arrived. Some came from the consortium world, sent by individual captains who defied their own governments. Some came from species that had voted to abandon the Vidians, but had been haunted by that choice ever since. By day 50, there were over 200 ships in orbit. The fleet had grown from 47 civilian vessels to an armada of rescue workers from across the galaxy. They worked together, shared resources, and pushed themselves to save every life they could. On day 52, with the star entering its final collapse, 1 year later, Earth orbit was crowded with ships. Representatives from 240 species had come to witness the dedication of the memorial station. The structure hung in space near Luna, a beautiful ring of silver and light that could be seen from Earth's surface. At its heart was a wall, made of crystal inscribed with names. 1,247 names. The humans who had died during the rescue operation, some from equipment failures, some from radiation exposure, some from exhaustion, their hearts giving out after pushing themselves too far for too long. Each name represented someone who had looked at innocent people dying and said, "Not on my watch." Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood near the memorial, though she no longer needed to stand. Her legs had been destroyed by radiation during the final days of the evacuation. The doctors had done what they could, but some damage was beyond healing. Now she used a wheelchair, one that floated on anti-gravity generators. She did not mind. She was alive. 15 million Vidians were alive. That was what mattered. Kesha stood beside her, now wearing the formal robes of the Vidian ambassador to Earth. Her people had been given land on 3 different worlds in human protected space. They were building new cities, starting new lives, learning to call strange places home. "I come here every day," Keshela said quietly. Looking at the names on the wall, I read the names and tried to remember that real people with families and dreams and futures gave all of that up for strangers they never met. They did not give it up, Sarah replied. They spent their lives buying futures for your people. That is not a waste. That is the most valuable purchase anyone can make. A small Vidian child, maybe 4 years old, ran past them chasing a ball. She laughed, the sound bright and innocent. Her parents walked behind her, smiling as they watched their daughter play. The child had been one of the first evacuated, separated from her parents for weeks before they were all reunited. Now they were together again, building a new life on a colony world named Hope. She does not remember her old home. Keshula said to her, "This is just life." She does not know how close she came to never existing. Maybe that is good. Sarah said the dead bought her a normal life. That seems like a gift worth giving. The dedication ceremony began. President Jiang spoke. Her voice carried to all the assembled ships. "We gather here to remember those who taught us what it means to be human, not human as a species, but human as a value. To be human is to help. To be human is to stand with those who have no one else. To be human is to look at impossible odds and say, 'I will try anyway.'" She paused, letting her words sink in. But this memorial is not just about humans. It honors the Krillin who flew until their ships fell apart, the Daxer who shared the last of their medical supplies, the Zethari who chose honor over orders. Every species represented here today understood the same truth. We are stronger together than apart. We are better when we help each other than when we help only ourselves. Admiral the sat in the Zethari section, though she wore no uniform. The Zethari Empire had stripped her of rank and exiled her for defying orders. She had lost everything: her position, her honors, her place in society. Some might think she had been defeated, but she had been offered command of the new Alliance Defense Force, a military organization formed by the species who had participated in the rescue. She wore civilian clothes by choice, not shame. She had learned that honor was not found in uniforms and ranks, but in choices and actions. After the ceremony, the representatives gathered in the station's main hall. It was here that the real purpose of the Day would be revealed. Ambassador Chen stood at the podium. He looked older than he had a year ago, his hair showing more gray, his face marked by the stress of months spent fighting political battles, but he also looked satisfied. The Galactic Council is broken, he announced, not destroyed, but fundamentally changed. 307 species have now signed the new accord, a replacement for the old council that includes protections we should have had from the beginning. He pulled up a document on the screens around the hall. The right to refuge. No species may be abandoned to natural disaster or preventable death, based solely on economic calculation. The value of life principle. All species are equal in worth regardless of their economic or military power. The duty to aid those with resources have an obligation to help those in need. There was applause from many sections, though Chen noticed some species remained silent. The old powers, the ones who had voted to abandon the Vidians, were not happy with these changes. The old council still exists, Chen continued. The Zathari Empire, the consortium, and their allies have refused to sign the new accord. They say we are being naive. They say we cannot afford to help everyone. They say the galaxy runs on power and profit, not idealism and compassion. He smiled. Let them think that we know different. We have seen what happens when ordinary people from ordinary worlds decide to help each other. We have seen the impossible become possible. We are the new accord, and we stand together. The applause was thunderous this time. 300 species, most of them small and weak by traditional measures, united by a shared belief that there was a better way to live in the galaxy. But Chen had one more announcement. The new accord recognizes humanity's actions as the catalyst for this change. We are being offered a permanent seat on the Council of Equals, the governing body of the new accord. This was met with approval from almost everyone. Humanity had earned it, but there is another honor being given today. Chen said, Captain Sarah Okonkwo, would you please join me? Sarah floated her wheelchair to the podium. She had not known this was coming. Chen smiled at her. The independent rescue fleet operated without official sanction. You led it without any military authority. You risked everything without any promise of reward. The new accord wishes to offer you the position of Director of Emergency Response with the authority to coordinate rescue operations across all member species. Sarah stared at him. You want me to do this again? To organize more rescue missions? We want you to build a system so that next time, if there is a next time, we are ready. We want ships designed for evacuation, trained crews who know how to handle disasters, protocols that work. We want to make sure that no species is ever abandoned. Again, Sarah thought about the 600,000 Vidians who had not made it, about the mistakes made from inexperience and desperation, about how many more they might have saved if they had been prepared. I accept, she said. Applause was deafening. 6 months after that, the first disaster response drill took place. 300 ships from 80 species practiced evacuating a simulated disaster zone. It went better than the actual Vidian rescue, though there were still problems to solve. Sarah worked with her team to fix each issue, improving the system bit by bit. The Vidian colony world of hope grew and prospered. The Vidians, grateful beyond words, threw themselves into repaying the debt they felt they owed their Scientists shared their knowledge of bioengineering freely. Their engineers helped design better evacuation systems. Their artists created monuments to the species that had saved them, beautiful works that spread across the new accord worlds. But Kashila told them they did not need to repay anyone. You are alive. She said, that is payment enough. Live well, be happy. That is what those who died wanted for us on Earth. In Sao Paulo and New York and Shanghai and Lagos and 100 other cities, monuments were built to the rescue workers. Some listed names, others showed images of the rescue, humans and aliens working side by side. Children visited these monuments on school trips, learning about the time their species had looked at a dying world and refused to look away. The old council continued to exist, diminished but not destroyed. The Zethari Empire and their allies had power, still controlled major trade routes and wealthy systems, but their influence was fading as more species chose to join the new accord instead. Some said the galaxy was now divided. Some said the new accord was naive and would collapse when faced with real challenges. Some predicted wars between the two systems, but others saw something different. They saw proof that another way was possible. They saw that compassion could be practical, that helping others could make everyone stronger, that the weak could stand together and become mighty. 2 years after the rescue, Sarah attended a graduation ceremony at the new Emergency Response Academy on Mars. 150 cadets from 30 different species were receiving their certifications. They had trained in disaster response, in xenobiology, in crisis management, and interspecies cooperation. One of the graduates was a young Vidian woman who had been a child during the evacuation. She stood proudly in her uniform, the first Vidian to qualify as an emergency responder. Why did you choose this? Sarah asked her after the ceremony. Because humans saved me, the young woman replied. Because I want to save others, because someone has to stand up and say that lives matter more than profit. Someone has to be willing to help. Why not me? Sarah smiled. That was the answer she had been hoping for. That night, Sarah visited the memorial station one more time. She floated near the crystal wall with its 1,000 names, reading them slowly. James